over the past few weeks as we have been recalibrating to address the concerns raised from the last meeting. And we've been planning for a more thoughtful kickoff to our important work together, and that's tonight. So I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly apologize to Ms. Madrigal and to anyone on the committee and anyone in attendance, and express how deeply sorry we are for any misstatements or inappropriate reactions during the meeting that caused pain.
Peggy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we should probably get through the interpretation channel and all that set up before we have you start, if that's okay.
Yeah, and okay. I can. All right. Welcome, everyone.
So sorry. So sorry about that.
Right. That's
so
right.
Sorry, but I just want to give Christina an opportunity to kind of go through that interpretation and roll call, and then we'll get right back to that once we have the interpretation. Sorry about that, Peggy.
That's all right.
Christina, over to you.
Peggy will welcome you even more in just a little bit. Thank you all for being here this evening. We're really happy to get back together for our second GPAC meeting. First, before even more welcoming, we are going to talk a little bit about how the Spanish interpretation is going to work and do a little bit of housekeeping. So Martín, please go ahead.
Hola, muy buenas noches a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Martín Rivarola. Junto con mi compañero Gustavo, en la noche de hoy vamos a estar ofreciéndoles interpretación, traducción simultánea. Si usted quiere, se siente más cómoda escuchando esta sesión de esta noche en el canal en español, todo lo que debe hacer es buscar en la parte de abajo de su pantalla donde dice Interpretation. Ahí usted aprieta ahí, le va a dar la opción de español y haciendo clic en español o Spanish, ahí inmediatamente usted va a estar escuchándome a mí y a Gustavo en español. Muchas gracias y estamos aquí para servirles. Thank you, Cristina.
Thank you, Martín. So Martín and Gustavo will be providing live interpretation throughout this GPAC meeting, and they will be flagging us if we need to speak more slowly, because that's certainly something that we need to keep in mind as they're doing their work. So thank you very much. I am quickly going to go through our roll call. If you can indicate your presence in whatever way you please do. Yeah. Alan? You okay? Okay. Dave Alden?
Here.
Panama, Bartholomew?
Present.
Thank you. Stephanie Blake?
Yep, here.
Phil Boyle? No Phil yet. Matt Brown?
Here.
Thank you. Aaron Chmielewski? Thank you. Delia Diaz?
Here.
Mary Dooley?
Here.
Sierra Downey?
Here.
Jesse Feller? No Jesse yet. Ali Gaylord?
Here.
Thank you. Yancy Jacobo?
Here.
Roger Leventhal?
Here.
Ileana Madrigal?
Present.
Roberto Mares?
Here.
Chris, I always want to say Chris Rebio. Sorry, Chris, you'll have to tell me.
And I am here.
Thank you. Hello. Bill Reinhardt.
Here.
John Shribs. Not yet. Josh Simmons.
Present.
Thank you. Joanna Skater Thompson.
Here.
And Bill Wolpert. Not yet. So there are 3 folks who we haven't seen yet, but hopefully they will join us in a little bit. Now Dave's going to take us through some more logistics, how to use Zoom. We're all Zoom pros. Many of us are Zoom pros, but the technology is ever changing. And just in case folks from the public who aren't familiar are just joining us, we're going to go through some how to access points.
Great.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you for that. So as Christina mentioned, these are just real quick reminders. You all have been through this so many times. I'm sure you are experts at this, but just as a reminder of your audio options, to either be joining us through your computer and or by cell phone. If you've dialed in, you have that access code. We do have closed caption available as well for this meeting. Just a reminder there. Once you're connected, if you can, please mute yourself until you are ready to speak. That would be much appreciated. And that goes for members of GPAC, members of the public. When we get to public comment, you will be unmuted to allow you to contribute as well. And also for GPAC, we'd love for you to be on screen with us the whole time so we can see your friendly faces. So if you can do that, that would be great. And the public cameras are off as you all are invitees until we get to that public comment section. And as I mentioned earlier, the raise your hand function, you all are well aware of this as well as we did it last time, but you can access that either through your participant window or through your reactions. If you could please do us a huge favor and use that hand raise function when you are wanting to contribute, and then I will go ahead and call your name and you could unmute yourself and contribute that way. And same holds true for the members of the public when we go through public comment. When you're ready to comment, if you can, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll go ahead and unmute you in that section. And then for any technical difficulties, just real quickly here, we have Eric Roberts from the City of Petaluma available at eroberts@cityofpetaluma.org, or Martine, who's our translator for those that are joining us through the Spanish channel. So with that, I just want to very quickly give us an overview of this evening, and then I'll hand it over to Peggy to get us started. We want to start with a general welcome, and we'll have a bit of a debrief as to what we heard from you all during the last meeting, and we'll get deep into that throughout this evening's events. We want to walk through and get your feedback as GPAC members on group agreements and how we're going to work together. We'll revisit GPAC rules, and we'll talk a lot about that here this evening. We're also hoping to have interactive exercise with you all to talk about future topics that you would like to cover at GPAC meetings. And then as always, we'll have public comments and then some closing thoughts to give you all additional space after you've heard everyone's comments, if you have any other thoughts before we move through to next steps and wrapping the meeting. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Peggy to get us started.
Just one sec, sorry, Dave. Janice has her hand up.
I got a text from somebody that they can't get onto the Zoom.
There was something wrong with the link in the agenda for some reason. We switched this meeting from between a couple of formats, but the public agenda that's posted now is correct.
It's updated.
Okay.
I've just had somebody do the same thing to me, Janice, and they just tried it again and the link works.
Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll text her. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Thanks for the heads up.
And to that point, we do have a couple of discussion points that are, discussion times for the whole group. But if you have an interim question or comment, you can go ahead and raise your hand at any time, GPAC folks.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Dave. I'm going to try this again. Hey, welcome and good evening to our General Plan Advisory Committee members and our community in attendance. I want to thank you for your patience over the past few weeks as we've taken this time to recalibrate and address the concerns, very valid concerns raised from the last meeting. And as we plan for a more thoughtful kickoff tonight to kick off our important work together. I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly apologize to Ileana Madrigal and to anyone on the committee and anyone in attendance and express how deeply sorry we are for any misstatements or inappropriate reactions during the meeting that caused pain and feelings of marginalization. That's not how we operate as a city staff, and that behavior will not reoccur. While that was not the intention of either city staff or our consultant team, we recognize the damage that was created by the incident, especially as we're developing these new relationships. We are committed to working together and ensuring that everyone who participates will be listened to and responded to with dignity and respect. We're committed to continuously improving how we manage our meetings and engage our community to ensure everyone feels safe and heard and can participate freely. Every question is valid. I don't want anybody to silence themselves or worry about maybe I shouldn't ask it. We're going to rely really heavily on this group, your expertise and your experiences and your backgrounds are all super important, what you bring to the table. And so I really want you to feel very free to ask questions and make comments. Again, we're going to be working together very closely. So despite this difficult start, we're looking very forward to working together and hope this effort is one of many ways we'll build trust and understanding between our city and our diverse community, and that we can move forward together with purpose and unity. And with that said, I'd like to ask our consultant, Matt Rainey, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thanks, Peggy. Good evening, everyone. I just want to apologize to Ileana and the rest of the GPAC for what happened at the last meeting. Ileana, I in no way meant to humiliate, upset, or invalidate you, and I'm truly sorry that this happened. It's not who I am, it's not what I stand for, and in fact, quite the opposite is true. My reputation, my company's reputation was really built on a passion and desire to include traditionally underrepresented voices in the process, and to advance health, equity, and justice in planning projects. It hurt me deeply that it happened to hurt me deeply that I did something that hurt someone else. For me, the GPAC conversation felt really emotionally charged. And personally, I often use humor as a way of diffusing tense situations. It's really part of my culture to bring levity to tense situations. But looking back, I can understand how my response to your question was interpreted as perpetuating the oppressive status quo, where women and people of color's ideas aren't taken seriously, or treated less important or silly or wrong. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this over the last 2 months, and spent a lot of time talking to people, including my wife, who's the daughter of immigrants from Cuba and Colombia. And I've seen firsthand some of her struggles, and I was especially upset that I was viewed as one of the people perpetuating the status quo. But please note, it was not my intent to harm. I really was trying to bring humor to the moment and not harm, so I apologize for that. I hope with time you'll see my commitment to you all, to creating a stronger community for all of your residents. I'm really confident that we can take this as a learning experience, move forward together in a collaborative way. If anyone would like to speak with me personally about the situation or about what happened, I really would welcome the opportunity, either one-on-one or in small groups. So please let me know. And again, please accept my apologies for what happened. Dave, back to you.
Great. Thank you for that, Peggy and Matt. Appreciate it. So at this point, we just wanted to open it up for any follow-up questions, thoughts, concerns that GPAC members would like to ask of the group now before we move further into the agenda items that we have. So we just want to open up this space now to have an open conversation. If anyone would like to raise their hand physically or through the raise hand feature and unmute themselves, you're welcome to now. Okay.
Ileana has her hand raised.
Yes. Yeah, I just saw that. Yes, Ileana, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate the apology and that you are recognizing what happened. Going forward, I will be paying special attention to how our practices will impact the participation of speakers, Spanish speakers in our community. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Ileana. Thanks for that. Janice, did you have your hand raised for a second there as well?
Yeah. Somebody else had trouble getting on, so I just sent them the link again. So I hope that works.
Okay. Thank you, Janice. Yeah, we'll continue to follow up behind the scenes. Appreciate that. Erin, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I do want to say thank you for taking the time to recognize this very important situation that occurred. I do appreciate Matt's apology. I would actually welcome the opportunity to speak to you directly to talk about more of how your apology even came through. Words don't always elicit the response you think, so I think that it would be a good opportunity to kind of understand how I'm always bad at picking, it's kind of gaslighting, like, oh, I didn't intend to do something, but it's about the impact. And sometimes if we use the word intended, it's like deferring the guilt of it onto the person who is actually the victim. So I would love to be able to have a conversation, please.
Absolutely. I can reach out to you, or you can reach out to me.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much. Anyone else have any thoughts before we move forward? Don't see any hands raised. So thank you all again, and thank you for your feedback. So with that, I quickly wanted to share what we anticipate, again, kind of going through this evening's agenda is really, we're going to start off by talking through some what we call group agreements or guiding principles of how we want to interact and how we want to work together in a really constructive way and respectful way as we move through this process. We're going to get deep into the role of the GPAC. We know that came up as a question and concern at the first meeting, so we want to work with you all to help kind of define that and guide the process moving forward. And along with that, how we make decisions and what tools we might use. We have a few suggestions and a couple that we're going to use here tonight, but we're definitely all ears and want to get your feedback on that front as well. And then how the public participates in the process and interacts at GPAC meetings. We know that topic was an important one as well. And then we also want to talk about the topics that we'll actually cover in these meetings moving forward. And we'd love to get your feedback. There are major topics within a general plan element process, but we want to open it up and get your feedback on what is most important to you. So I just wanted to mention that real quick before we launch into the presentation here. So as I mentioned, the first thing that we like to talk about again are group agreements. And this is something that we'll bring up at the beginning of every meeting, again, to kind of set the basis of how we're going to work together, setting that safe space, providing space for everyone to contribute freely. And with that, we typically have a set of ideas about how that might look, but we really want to hear from you all, most importantly, of how you think those guiding principles should be set. And that's something that could evolve as we move through the process, but at minimum, we want to get a sense from you all, again, how you want to interact with each other during and between meetings, how you might share time at these meetings, and then just generally how we treat each other when there's a difference of opinion. So with that, this is our first foray now into an interactive component of this, and members of the GPAC were emailed directions to get onto this, what I think is a pretty groovy resource called Padlet. And it's a very simple kind of sticky note exercise that we'll do on this board. But again, for those that didn't access it or don't want to access it, no problem at all. We also definitely want to, more importantly, have a verbal kind of communication with you all and discussion. And we have folks in the background that will be typing up your input and throwing it up on this board as well. But if you do want to contribute, you simply press that little plus mark on the bottom right-hand corner of the board when you're there. And that'll bring up a sticky note, and you can type in whatever you'd like there that's related to group agreements. You'll also see another section of the board that's going to be about general plan topics. That topic we'll cover later in the agenda, so we just want to focus on that. And then once you do put up a comment, other members of GPAC can up or down vote just to kind of show that they agree or possibly disagree with any one of the suggestions. And you could also comment on other folks' suggestions as well. So with that, and if there aren't any other questions or any questions related to this, and if there are during and you still would like to still get on and don't have access to it, you can actually email my colleague Paul at paul@plantoplace.com. He can make sure to give you access to it as well, and or we can share a link if needed. So I'm going to go ahead and just actually stop sharing screen for 1 second, and I'm going to bring up that board, and then we're going to launch right in. So let's see here. So hopefully you all could see, and this is, so for members of the public, we really appreciate your patience as well. This is at this point for the GPAC members to kind of contribute and give us their thoughts again of how they want to work together, but I'm sharing my screen here so that you all at home or wherever you may be can follow along with us as we have this discussion. So with that, you all, again, if you don't actually are not on the board or don't want to go on the board and contribute that way, you can just, we can have a discussion about it and we'll be typing up those notes for you.
Excuse me, Dave and,
Sure.
and Paul, for those folks who weren't able to create an account, et cetera, can you just shoot me the most simple access link and I will send that out to GPAC folks right now in case you need that to get on?
That sounds great. Yeah, Paul, if you can go ahead and send that link over, that would be great. Look at that. Sierra has jumped into the mix. Thank you, Sierra. So I'm going to go ahead and read these as well, more so for the interpretation's sake, but also just in case you all can't see the screen for any reason. And let me know if you'd like me to zoom in, and I can. But Sierra's suggestion is be aware of the identities you hold when contributing. Think about how they might make you contribute more or less frequently, and contribute accordingly. Thank you very much for that, Sierra. Great suggestion. Any other thoughts? Again, feel free to share verbally and we can type them in for you, or if you want to use this fun interactive component, you can go ahead and do that. Sierra, hold curiosity and open mind. Thank you, Sierra. Great. Thank you for that. I'm gonna just move some of these sticky notes around just to make sure that none of them get buried as folks are typing. But again, I want to open this up for you all that might not want to get on this board to also use the raise your hand feature and share your thoughts verbally as well. But this is meant to be as easy and accessible for you all to be able to contribute to really set the basis of how we're going to work together moving forward here. I see Josh added, remember to speak slowly for interpretation. Thank you for that, Josh. That's very important. And Martine is giving you the thumbs up. Thank you for that. Great suggestion. Aaron has suggested make space or take space. Be cautious in a conversation about who is speaking and how much. Thank you for that, Aaron. So we always do like to say share the floor. So be really cognizant of that and allow space for everyone to contribute. Great suggestion. Sierra mentioned recognize various forms of knowledge. Thank you for that, Sierra. And again, I highly encourage you all to use that raise hand if you'd like to contribute verbally as well. And we could spend as much or as little time on this one topic as you all like, but I want to give you a chance to contribute here. And everything that is contributed, just as a reminder, we'll bring all this back forward to you all in draft form and ask for your feedback as we move through this process. So Roberto, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, I can't really use the tool right now, but
No problem.
I was wondering if this would be an appropriate time to maybe bring up the potential of meeting in person, given kind of the state of affairs of where the world's heading.
Yeah, appreciate that comment, Roberto. Christina, do you want to respond to that?
I can respond very briefly. I'm sure that Peggy knows a lot more about this than I do. I know that the city is beginning to think about how to navigate meetings coming back into person. Peggy, please go ahead.
I was just going to say we want to make sure everybody's safe. I know that everybody's very interested in starting to meet in person. We just want to make sure, especially with a larger group, that everyone's safe and that it'll be meaningful when we get back. And part of it's also the technological challenges we have in some of our buildings. So we will continue to work on that, and we're looking forward to in-person meetings, maybe even outside.
Excellent.
Just wanted to make sure, Paul, is that link to Padlet on its way so I can send it to GPAC folks? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Also, I see John added learn to use new tool, learning to use a new tool here. All right, that's great. That's great. Thank you, John. You're doing great. Looks like Roger contributed with disagreement on issues is not disrespectful. A healthy demographic process requires the ability to speak one's mind, and listen to others and move forward. Thank you for that, Roger. That's great. Appreciate it. It looks like you all are learning how to use the up and down voting for those that you are supporting, which is excellent. I see that there's additional support for making space and taking space and being cautious and sharing the floor and remembering to speak slowly. Excellent. Jesse noted that I would support an in-person meeting outside as a way to really get to know each other and build community, given the size of this group. I think we would all agree with that. It would be great to see you all.
To work tonight. What's the deal?
Excellent. Sierra is noting recognize all and various forms of knowledge. Thank you so much, Sierra. Any other thoughts? Yes, Aaron, I see your hand raised.
I didn't know if we, in thinking about the tools that we're going to be using, if we'll have like a messaging system that we can have during this, because it'll allow for, you know, if one person's bringing up a topic and if we're reading it, then it allows for us to chat about that in a more conversational type way in this setting. Are
you asking if there could be a chat feature between panelists?
Yeah.
Through the Q&A? We've been challenged by that through Zoom. When we're doing a webinar, there is a Q&A feature that allows those Q&A questions to go to panelists and to the host and co-host. So we could potentially use that, but it doesn't function quite the same way as chat does. If we were to move to a Zoom meeting format, which is slightly different, it allows us to have small groups discussions, which we do plan to do, then that chat feature is more readily available that way. But I believe it would all have to stay on screen so that we can all see it. So that's the challenge. Yeah.
Well, I know, and that is a difficulty. I understand some of the limitations that Zoom has. Something more like similar to Slack would be a great way to communicate live and in person in a group, and then all of that text is still usable for later and it's just on there. And if we're using outside, you know, things like, you know, Padlet and whatnot, there allows for something that maybe we could use too. So
that's a fantastic suggestion, Aaron. Yeah, I'm just going to ask maybe Eric, city's attorney, to weigh in. I believe all that communication would just have to be visible for everyone to see potentially. And we could do that with Slack as well. For your suggestion, it could just bring up a screen so that we're all kind of tracking along. Eric, is that right?
That is right. One of the, we are balancing compliance with the Brown Act and transparency and public participation with effectively managing the meeting so the committee can accomplish its business and have its discussions that are going to be informing the general plan. So
it says I'm connected, so I think it's the.
We can see you, but so anyway, just to finish that, we do have to evaluate any tools that we may want to use to make sure that they don't provide for a majority of the committee being in communication away from the public. If there's voting that it's visible and that sort of thing. So I'd be happy to look at those and work with staff in the committee to look at those that may be helpful, but those are some of the considerations that we'll have to be sure to address. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. And great suggestion, Aaron. And let's definitely continue to be in touch. And as part of this, we'll talk a little bit more about other tools, and please give us those suggestions as we move through this that you all have used in other virtual settings, and we'll try our best to incorporate those and not blow up the Brown Act requirements at the same time. So we'll have to be careful with that. Christina, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to let all the GPAC folks know that the link to this Padlet where you can click and you don't have to sign up for an account is in your mailboxes, and we will be coming back to this to try the tool again later in the meeting when we talk about what topics we want to cover. I just want to open up the floor in case there's anybody who wants to verbally give a comment, and we can record that for you.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, and I do see there's a couple others that came through. Active listening, build on each other's ideas. I love that. Very nice. Looks like there's support for all these ideas, which is wonderful. You all are already working and collaborating here together, which is great to see. There's support for additional communication tools. Thank you, Josh. And Jesse suggested WhatsApp be a good way to communicate with each other. I think that same concern might apply, we'd have to make sure that it's up on the screen if that chat is happening, but we could definitely look into that and see if we can do a shared screen that way, where that chat is kind of happening concurrently. So all fantastic suggestions. We appreciate that. Let's see, any other ideas before we move forward? And I just want to reiterate, this isn't your only bite of this apple at all. I mean, we'll continue to come back to this as we move through the process. We'll draft up these ideas that you all had and bring that back to you at the beginning of every meeting. And if anything comes up during the meeting that we think should go into these group agreements, we could always add it to it. So not your only opportunity to contribute, but we really appreciate these very thoughtful ideas that you all have shared here today. So unless there's any other ideas that you all would like to share right now, and I don't think there's anything I missed on the screen, I think we might go ahead and move forward with the other agenda items. Does that sound good to you all? Can I get a thumbs up? Yeah, I see it. Great. All right, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Oh, I see one more, Sierra. Oh, there's another one. Consent culture, content warnings when necessary. Thank you so much. Oop, and then Mary suggested I prefer the Zoom meetings. Excellent. So Zoom meetings over webinar. Thank you for that suggestion, Mary. Okay. We could definitely look into that as well, Mary. That is something that we're thinking about transitioning to, again, as we kind of look at different formats that we'll be holding these meetings. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. And I'm going to bring back up the PowerPoint so that we can dive into the next section of our conversation.
Dave, can I just ask Mary
Sure.
for clarification on that? Mary, are you referring to Zoom meeting versus Zoom webinar, or are you saying the Zoom versus in person?
Versus in person. I added that, but
Okay.
Yeah, I prefer the Zoom or this format over in person for resources, timing, just safety. If we want to have a party, that's fine, but this is for work, and this is not, a social party for me.
Thank you for that, Mary, and thank you for catching that, Heather. Thanks for that clarification. And duly noted, we do want to definitely value your time as well. And I do know that this makes getting together a little bit more convenient. So thank you for that suggestion, Mary.
No pun intended, duly noted. I just wanted to support Mary's comment, as I did in the comment section, that the convenience of the Zoom meetings for those of us working and trying to drive, then would have to drive there if we got off work on time, then find parking, then get in there, then be ready, and still have had time to review this all when we get it like really late in the game, just as a support on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And one thing just to note, and we don't have to belabor the point, but as Peggy mentioned earlier, there is a hybrid approach happening where those that want to join in person can, and others that want to join via Zoom or other formats through a live stream can do that as well. So there might be a way for us to kind of find that happy medium down the road. So I just want to put that out there, and we'll continue to work together to find what that means as we work through this process together. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again here. So we're going to spend about the next 5 to 10 minutes providing a brief presentation, really responding to some of the feedback, again, that we received from you all at the previous meeting and in between meetings to help to define the role of the GPAC. And we're coming at this with some suggestions, but it's really to open the floor to you all as members of the GPAC to help define what that means. And again, kind of how we work together and how you contribute to the process, how the decision-making process would work. So it's really an opportunity for us to collaborate here as a group and collectively decide about how we're going to work together moving forward and make this as valuable a process for you all as possible, because that's the most important while we navigate this very tricky general plan element update process. There's a lot of of information that we're going to be sharing with you all to help absorb, but most importantly, we want to provide that space for you all to provide feedback and help guide a valuable process for us all. So with that, we have a few slides here. And again, on each slide, you'll see some questions for consideration, we're calling it. And we ask that you think about that as you move to the presentation, but we'll allow space for discussion after those sets of slides. With that said, if you do have a specific question or comment that you'd like to make as we're moving through it, please do feel free to raise your hand with the raise hand feature, and we're happy to stop and answer those questions so that we can make this a conversation and then move through this together. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christina.
Everyone, thank you for going through this live and helping us try these tools to discuss and kind of evolving this group together. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the city was thinking about the role of the GPAC when the city formed the GPAC. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you guys want to run the group now that you're here and it's running, and we want to hear as much from you as possible. And we have a couple of questions for your consideration that are down here at the bottom. We can talk a little bit about these as the slide ends, but then we also have a longer time for discussion after that. So the GPAC is unique in the city of Petaluma. It was created specifically to provide feedback on the general plan. We have a 21-member ad hoc committee, as you all know, selected by City Council to represent different neighborhoods, different interest groups, different parts of the Petaluma community, so that we really are hearing from that subsection and a bunch of different folks with different expertise as well. I mean, of course, we can't have the whole liveliness of the Petaluma community in one group, but adding 21 folks helps us to start to get there. The original purposes for the GPAC are to help guide our outreach and engagement efforts, to help inform our efforts so that we do them as thoroughly as possible and as well as possible throughout the general plan process, to help us interpret feedback that we get from the community in our engagement activities, and to provide feedback to City Council on all of the deliverables that we will be developing as part of the general plan. Because it's an advisory committee and because it's such a large group, it's really okay if folks don't agree with one another. And our intention is to carry all of that feedback, you know, folks that thought one way, folks that thought another way, and folks that thought a third way, forward to City Council. And we'll talk a little bit more about all the other ways that they're going to be hearing from the community and from decision makers. And so we're really looking forward to helping the group to coalesce around some ideas, and then also helping to express a variety of opinions to council. We also are producing a very technical document, and we're looking forward to diving into technical aspects of the planning process and to hearing your feedback on that. And we are, towards the end of the meeting, if we have time, going to talk about the topics that are really important to you that we cover. So some questions for you to consider are: how best can the GPAC best contribute to the general plan update process? And how would you like to define the GPAC's role relative to the general public? And Paul, do you want folks to kind of call out their thoughts now, or do you want to hold on for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, folks, you're welcome to give us your suggestions now. We do have a few other slides that might kind of continue to help define what's on this slide currently. We do have a couple slides that kind of has a sample of how that process will work and how your feedback will be used to move the process forward. So if there aren't any initial questions here, I'd love to hand it over to Matt to talk a little bit more about the project roadmap itself, and again, how your input will be fed into the feedback loop as it kind of works its way towards City Council. So, John, I do see your hand raised, though. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Just a quick technical question here.
Sure.
I tried to, could not find, I don't have a chat button like I usually do. And even in the Q&A, I open that up and there's no questions or answers. I can't ask a question using the Q&A below. So is that only open Can we only do that when you decide when we can chat and do Q&A? Or is there some way I can do that while you guys are talking?
That should be available for you to use. It's typically also invites members of the community to contribute. But Eric, I'm going to ask you if you can look into that to see if we can open that up for any questions to be asked. But John, you're also welcome to verbalize those comments if you'd like to ask them now, whatever is easier for you.
No, I'm just trying to find the smoothest way of how to interact right now. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the question, John. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure to look into that right away to see if we can get that remedied. Allie, I see your hand raised.
You're probably going to adjust this a little bit, but I'm just wondering how it's proposed that the disparate or maybe some disagreements that we might have, how will like a couple of points of view be able to be provided as feedback to the city council? And how are we going to be able to make sure that that happens authentically, since we're such a large group?
Yeah, fantastic question, Allie. And I'll ask Christina to maybe come back up and answer that. But I think to Christina's point, we're going to take all comments really to city council. So everything that we hear from you all, whether there's consensus or not consensus, or however that might navigate through the process, to make sure that all of the feedback is heard concurrently. But I don't know if Christina, if you want to add more to that. I know that's a great question.
Sure. So there are a lot of different ways for us to capture feedback and thoughts and to take that forward to council. And we're going to be going through a few different tools, which are really direct ways for folks to give us feedback. That includes Padlet. And unfortunately, Paul is recording the Spanish channel and he sent me the wrong link. So I have sent you a new link. We really apologize for that technical glitch. But Padlet recordings of meetings are one very thorough way. Those are always available. We are doing meeting summaries as well and posting those. So Paul or if somebody's taking notes, and that gets put into a meeting summary that we all review a couple of different times to make sure that everybody's feedback was captured. We're also going to be experimenting even in this meeting with a couple of different ways of voting or polling. So there's anonymous voting, which is also called polling. And then there's roll call voting, where everybody gives their opinion after their name is called. And then we can take all of that data and summary, et cetera, forward to council. And then we also write staff reports that summarize it once again.
Yeah, I would add in to this discussion too, similar to, forwarding a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the council, or the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee to the Planning Commission, or, in any of those feedback loops. Oftentimes you maybe didn't have a unanimous vote or a unanimous recommendation. And so we try to both forward what that recommendation was, but also identify that it wasn't unanimous. And here are some of the concerns that were expressed by members of the GPAC or Planning Commission or whoever the body is. So I would see similar, making sure that we're communicating with that as things move to the council.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina and Heather and Allie. I hope that answered your question, and we'll continue to talk about those tools that Christina just noted as well as we move through a couple more slides here. But great question. Thank you for that. Aaron, I see your hand raised.
I just want to kind of to reflect on this process that we're starting on. I feel like, calling out the obvious, that it feels like we're having to restart this process. Obviously, we're getting re-geared into this, but it feels still a bit chaotic, like we didn't have a direction, and I didn't know if it could be, the idea that we can do an accurate timeline in association with our deadline. I know there was a brief timeline on one of the slides before, and be able to do this other like tool stuff on the side, because I know we want to like have this, how we're going to contribute Well, I know for personally, and like a lot of people were saying, wanting to vote. Like we want to talk about the main topics that are required as a general plan, be able to dissect those, research them, and then vote on the potentials for the new version. And I just want to make sure that, because that was my thought of what we were going to be doing, and now I feel like we're having to like reconstruct what we're actually doing. So I just want to get a little bit of clarification and a little bit more confidence in this apparently new approach on our second meeting, before we're even going to get started on the meat and potatoes of it.
Sure. Yeah, no, and great points, Erin. And I'm confident maybe over the next couple slides that we have here that'll help kind of take shape for you and provide a little bit more kind of context and understanding of the big picture, the different phases of the project, when those are coming up, and how this feedback loop and interaction with you all is going to go. And maybe we should have just gotten there a little bit quicker, because I know that maybe is causing a little bit of misunderstanding as we're asking these big picture questions before letting you know how it's actually going to shape up. So if you could just maybe be patient with us just for the next 2 or 3 slides in the next 5 minutes, that would be excellent. And then if we do have additional follow-up and questions after that, we're happy to address it then. Does that sound okay? Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to talk through the project roadmap, and then again, an example of how this kind of decision-making process is going to go through these different phases. So over to you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And Erin, I hope this gets to a little bit of your question. So this is the roadmap that we showed before, and we can certainly send out a much more detailed schedule for the entire project. Too hard to, pretty detailed, but the essential flow is we're starting with the project initiation. Concurrent with that, we're doing our discovery phase, which is essentially existing conditions of technical data work, but also working with the community to understand the community's issues, which is very oftentimes different than what the data all tells us. From there, we move into the visioning phase, and where we're developing the broad vision and the sort of the desired outcomes that the community wants to see. And then based on the issues we identify in discovery and the vision, we create alternatives for how and potential solutions for how we're going to get to the goals and the vision that you want to see. From there, that leads us into even more detail, which is the policy development phase, where we're diving into the detail. Once we sort of have a direction that we want to go, we figure out exactly how that's going to work through goals and policies and actions. From there, we pull the plan together. The plan gets reviewed by the public and the GPAC and others, and then it goes through the review and adoption process. So very broadly speaking, that's sort of the arc of the entire project. If we go to the next slide, please. One of the things that is a little bit hard to explain in a graphic is that the general plan processes are not necessarily linear processes, and the engagement isn't necessarily linear. In fact, the process can be quite messy and complicated with lots of feedback loops. And what we're thinking of for how the GPAC and the public and the team really interact on a phase is shown here in just one example of how the feedback loop can work in terms of what the GPAC's role is relative to the public and the team and the city council, because it seemed like there was some questions about that at the last meeting. And so this is the visioning phase, which is phase 3. And I think that the best way to describe this as a pretty iterative phase. So at the very beginning of the phase, we're going to work with the GPAC to, for the visioning, brainstorm on topics that are important for the vision, brainstorm on how the community should be engaged in this phase of work, and then, of course, on what you think the vision for the community should be. Then we are going to take the ideas that you all have come up with and the ways of engagement and go out to the public and do a series of engagement events, whether it's pop-up workshops or online surveys or small group meetings or a combination of all of those. And so that gives us a whole body of information. And that information will then be compiled by the team and summarized. We summarize it. We also give all of the information. And in this example, we may use that to develop a very high-level draft of the vision and guiding principles based on what the GPAC and the public has said. Then that information essentially goes to the GPAC to review, to say whether we got it right, to modify it, and to change it. It will also probably go to boards and commissions. The timing, again, this is messy about whether it goes directly to boards and commissions or to you all and then boards and commissions. I think it needs to be worked out with timing in every phase. And then that information goes on to the city council. And as was mentioned, whether it's unanimous or whether there were dissenting opinions or different ideas, so that would then be presented to the council for review and approval so that we can then move on to the next phase. Clearly, the public also matters a lot in this process, as you know, and so while there is a filtering, we also want to give information to the city council directly that we heard from the public. And in our experience, we have found times where the public has one vision and direction on a topic, and a GPAC may have a different direction. And so we want to actually be able to say what the public said and what the GPAC said and why they maybe said things differently. So all of that needs to then go to the city council, who's the ultimate decision maker. And so ultimately what we see is really the role of the GPAC in this is starting out in the phase, guiding what's happening, and then helping to compile and make sure we got it right and package it and message it so that it can then go on to the council for review and finalization. And that flow will be a little bit different in every phase, but that's the basic philosophy. Christine, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Matt. I just wanted to pause just real quick. Aaron, I know you brought the question up. I just want to, this is one example of one phase. As Matt mentioned, the overall schedule is extremely detailed, and we're happy to kind of share that with you all as well. We've developed multiple graphics on how to kind of synchronize it and make it easy to share on a screen. And we'll continue to kind of bring those chunks and ideas and the entire project arc as well back to you all. But just wanted to circle back to see if you had any kind of follow-up questions on that piece before we move forward.
No, I did briefly see the slides beforehand. So it was just a more generalized like feeling that resource-wise didn't have anything prepared yet. Like I know we're just beginning, but I just feel like I am one who needs to be ready and be able to research and prepare. Sure. And to be able to have the time to process things too. So I'm just trying to get an overall picture, even if it is a very, very detailed big picture. I know I'm not the only one. I know my view isn't necessarily, the one that needs to be focused on, but I do want to at least express that the idea that I can analyze everything, even in a big picture, it helps me to absorb it. So.
Great.
But
yeah,
yes.
I appreciate that, Aaron. No, a great suggestion, and I'm sure there's others on the GPAC that share those same views. So we will definitely make sure that we share additional resources with you all to make sure that gives you all the information you need, and continue to ask us questions if it doesn't. So we appreciate that. John, I saw your hand up, but Christina, did you have a follow-up before we get to John?
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
Aaron, we're with you on wanting to have like, how does this all fit together? I keep saying like, I need the plan on a page, and it's sort of in my brain, but we have all been working on a lot of rounds, frankly, of like a graphic schedule of how do all of these different pieces fit together, because it's quite a complex process. And I don't know that we've really shared this with you, but one of the realizations that we came to in mapping this out is that it's pretty likely that, we have a very strict housing element deadline that we are going to need to meet because of state statute. And that's going to, entail a bunch of work that's relative to the general plan. But the general plan itself is likely to last, a little bit longer, just so that we have a little bit more time with those other topics. So we don't feel rushed. So we do feel like, okay, we tried to kind of get through logistics in our last meeting, but we stumbled a little bit, and it seemed like things were unclear, and we got off on the wrong tone. And so you're right that we are starting over a little bit. But we don't want everybody to feel rushed, and we are working on that schedule on a page to summarize all of that. And in this meeting, we will time allowing, get to like what topics do we really want to focus on.
Great, thank you for that follow-up, Christina. John, I see your hand raised.
Okay, I also put on the video. One of the problems I have with this diagram and this flow of thought is GPAC and public. Our group as an ad hoc group and under temporary deadlines and doing things, whether we represent the public and we gather information directly from the public and we represent the public and carry that forward, whether we'll have the ability to go out to the public. I know I've heard from there's a group of citizens that have formed a group that went and got a grant that would like to do the outreach and surveying of the public to provide information for the GPAC as a possibility. And so how does we as individuals, are we providing our individual flow of ideas and thoughts and vision, and as a group of 21 just doing that as individuals, or are we representing our factions as we come forward with all this and the public? Do we represent the public in this? So this is where the flow of information as to where it's all leading, because I'm starting to feel that the GPAC, we're sort of like here as a little side group and as a small little group providing a little bit of information, and basically we're being a little steamrolled by this housing issue. And I'd like to fight the housing issue, say, hey, that should not be our number one thing. We should go out and say legally, a lot of other cities are doing this now, I hear. Let's not allow the state and the feds to dominate our housing thing, and let's go and fight that. We have other things we need to fight that are more important. So allowing the housing and have this whole direction, you guys seem to be in charge of this flow and diagram, and so far we're not having a lot of input from us as to this interaction, where we fit in. So I really want to make sure we are clear on how we fit in to this process, and why is housing the number one dominant thing that's going to control the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'll start, and then I'll definitely ask the project team to contribute. But I'll say, John, in my mind, the number one and most important thing, or maybe not most important, but extremely important role for the GPAC is to ensure through your contacts, through your connections with the community, that we bring all voices forward. You all were chosen because you're so well connected within the community and have multiple perspectives that need to be fed into this overall process. And you mentioned going out to your constituents to bring that information forward. That is extremely vital and a huge benefit to this process to have you all a part of it. So I just wanted to kind of note that on your question about housing and how that might lead the process. I mean, that's happening on a concurrent track, but there's multiple other topics, and we'll talk about some here tonight, that are important to you all, that are equally important to housing, that we want to make sure are brought forward through this process as well. But before I go too much further in that explanation, I'm going to invite Heather to contribute to that thought as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the housing element timeline. And so it is not the only or the number one topic that will happen as part of the general plan, but the line that we have a statutory requirement to meet the state's timeline with the housing element. So we have, been having these discussions as we move towards this next housing cycle in terms of asking for extensions due to COVID and other things like that. But because it's a state statute that guides the due date, that there is not flexibility. There may be a flexibility for a couple months that we are pursuing, but that is a legal requirement that we need to work within the parameters of that. And there are consequences for not meeting those statutory guidelines, from not being eligible for funding to having to update your housing element more regularly on a 4-year cycle instead of an 8-year cycle. So while it is not the number one topic, it is the thing that it has the tighter timeline that we have to meet. So just a little background there.
Thank you for that follow-up, Heather. John, is that okay if we move forward? Does that answer some of your initial questions?
Yes, it does. Just wanted to get some clarity on those a couple issues right there and what's being presented. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Roberto, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you for this high-level view of this graphic. So I understand this is kind of a snapshot of the visioning phase. And where I'm curious is that in this kind of flow, there's no real indication of a city council feedback during the process. Maybe it is intended where, the city council might provide input, to the GPAC as we're developing some of our ideas, because what I would hate to see is that we get to the very end and we might have missed something blatantly obvious that, if we had some engagement throughout this flow, that we could have caught it or done a better job of kind of drafting our ideas or our recommendations to the city council. So I just wanted to get clarity if, the intent is to have a little bit more interaction between these phases and these flows with the city council, of some of their feedback of kind of our initial drafts and things like that.
Yeah, fantastic question, Roberto. And yeah, it's so hard to fit all of the different components onto one slide, but there definitely will be opportunities to go to city council throughout the process. One, to make sure that they're up to speed with how the process is going, and to give them an opportunity to also provide that input, which will then be brought back to you all. So it'll kind of be a circular feedback loop that way. I'm going to ask Matt if you want to add any additional kind of thoughts to that of how that process will be navigated with the city council as well.
No, I think that we are going to be going to the council regularly. We're going to be speaking with them in one-on-ones. We're going to have times when we're going to ask them sort of broad questions, and preguntas muy abiertas y todos vamos a tener.
Sorry, Matt, I'm going to ask you, wait one second. Gustavo, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you might have fallen out of the Spanish channel, so I'm going to ask Eric to put you back into the Spanish interpretation before we move forward.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
I have it on my screen now that it's available, that the interpretation, because there's an explanation that we usually give when we're hosting events and we're having simultaneous translation, reminding people to pick their language that they speak. So that's always a good habit to get into. It wasn't available earlier for me, but I see it there now. So even if you're predominantly an English speaking group, always select English so that you'll hear any Spanish speaking person. Because they're going to be doing the translation the other way. Otherwise, you're not going to know that. So just for the English speakers, don't discount the language.
I appreciate that, Aaron. Yeah, and we could work in just reminder slides even as we go through the presentation for those that might have joined late as well with those reminders. So appreciate that. Thank you. Eric, it looks like Martine is still in there. We might need to get Gustavo as well. Looks like we're all set now. Okay, back over to you, Matt.
No worries. So yeah, there will be feedback loops. We're going to get information from you all will get information from the council at different phases that will influence what you do. You're going to influence what they do. So there is a lot of feedback. It looks very linear, but there is a lot of feedback loops going on here. And I want to address something that John said just a moment ago about sort of the role of the GPAC in the public process. I think that's really open for discussion. And I think we want to hear what role you all want to play in that process. I know some people may want to just participate in GPAC meetings and just come to these meetings, and other people may want to go out and host a lot of events and be really engaged with the public. And what we want to do is work with you all to figure out what role not only the whole GPAC plays, but what role each of you want to play in this process and how engaged you want to be. And I think there's lots of opportunities if you want to host meetings, if you want to help with the events that the general plan team is doing. There's lots of opportunities for that. I think we just need to make sure we're really having a good dialogue with that. And I know that a group met after our meeting in March to brainstorm on engagement, and we can continue to do that. So there's lots of opportunities, I think, for some offline smaller conversations in working groups that can happen either around engagement or around specific topics, so that we can allow you all, Aaron, like you, who want to really dive into some details, we'll make sure that we have that process. I think some of it's going to depend on what you all want to do, and so you need to tell us, and we want to hear that tonight.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Matt. And great question, Roberto. So with that, we wanted to just take a quick step back, or in parallel. There was some question about the format of the meetings and just kind of some of the basics. So I'm going to hand this back over to Christina to take us through that.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go through some quick logistics that that we can discuss if anybody has anything that they want to point out about them. Our current schedule is that we will be holding these GPAC meetings monthly. It's quite a big group, and so we're really trying to respect the fact that everybody has carved out this time and not other times. It is potentially possible that we meet at other times, but that might be difficult for some folks. Meetings are scheduled from 6:30 to 9 right currently. We can talk about whether or not the group might be willing to go a little bit longer if there's a lot of public comment or a particularly juicy topic that we all want to cover. Meeting formats will vary by topic. So in some cases, we're going to have this kind of webinar format. In other cases where there are technical issues or multiple questions that we're discussing, we'll plan to have a different format so that folks can break out into subgroups of this group and have smaller conversations. And in those cases, the public could also join those smaller breakout rooms and potentially have folks from a public only room, depending on how folks want to be allocated. We will be providing background meeting materials several days prior to the meeting, particularly when there's technical material to get through that we want folks to respond to during the meeting. And we will be providing summaries of meetings, occurrences and thoughts, et cetera, before the next meeting each time. So questions for you to think about are whether or not you might want to add additional whole GPAC meetings or working group meetings, and what we should do if it seems like GPAC meetings might go past 9 o'clock.
Great. Thank you, Christina. And we can pause for some thoughts here, but we do have interactive exercises to get some feedback on these thoughts as well as we move forward. So, Erin, I see your hand raised.
I know, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I was just gonna ask that. I was like,
Sure.
Some of these questions, can we just put it in our, our Padlet?
Yes.
At least to get a start on.
Yeah, we actually going to introduce one other tool of just kind of doing some live polls and maybe even do a roll call vote on some of these questions as well. So we get to kind of play around with a couple other tools if that's okay for us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. And I want to apologize for the weird lighting that's happening in my space here right now. I hope you all can still see me. In about 15 minutes, I'll be back in complete view. Weird time of day here. So with that, I'm gonna hand it back over to Christina to talk through the role of the public in the GPAC meetings.
Thank you. So John started this conversation a little bit. In terms of the GPAC meetings themselves, all GPAC meetings like this one are open to the public. They are recorded in English and Spanish. Mr. Simmons may be additionally recording them and broadcasting them, so there's even more access to them. We have simultaneous Spanish interpretation and closed captioning available, and schedules, materials, notes, et cetera, will be available in Spanish as well as English. We also have a separate engagement process for the general public, so we will be going directly to the general public to make sure that we're hearing from a bunch of folks. You, of course, are also very welcome to speak to people in the community and to relay back to this group what you've heard. And the public is going to be able to participate in the GPAC meetings. Again, sort of depends a little bit on the focus of each meeting, but there will always be public comment and questions allowed. In some cases, we'll have parallel or integrated small group discussions, and then again, that public comment period. So one question that you might want to consider is, when should the public provide comments at GPAC meetings? You will have noted that the City Council often has a general public comment section up front in the meeting. This can sometimes make meetings run longer, but it is of course very important to hear from folks should that happen at the end. In this case, we have it scheduled for the end of this meeting, and then we do allow public comment for major agenda items as well. And then what role should the public have in the GPAC process if you have any other ideas?
Great, thank you so much, Christina. Yes, Josh, I see your hand raised.
One thing that I would just like to put out there is that these meetings are can often go a bit long, and I know people's availability shifts. I wonder if it might be worth considering placing public comment up front in these meetings.
Great suggestion, and yes, we could definitely consider that as part of this process. I know Christina just mentioned we're kind of running this a little bit more concurrently with how one of the decision maker meetings, like a planning commission or city council, might be run. But I'm sure that's a point that we could revisit and see if it might make sense. I could tell you we typically like to include the public comment near the end as well, just so the public has the opportunity to kind of hear from you all and get the full breadth of the conversation before they contribute, but not to say that we can't switch that up if it makes more sense. So great suggestion, Josh. Appreciate it. Okay, so I don't see any other hands raised for this section. And again, we'll get back to all these questions here shortly, but I wanted to take us through the different decision-making tools that we are hoping to use throughout the GPAC meetings. And as Christina mentioned earlier, there's multiple different formats of how we're going to gather input from you all. And we're fully open to other formats that you all might be familiar with and that you'd like to suggest that we use. But in general, there will be brainstorming at every meeting. It either happen as a full group, or as Christina mentioned, at times we might break out into small groups just to provide a little bit more space for folks to contribute. And then we can always come back together and do a report out. We'll do real-time polling, which we'll experience here in a second, maybe called straw polling, that gives you all the ability to anonymously provide your quote-unquote vote into the process. So you get to actually provide your vote equally amongst all GPAC members. Sometimes we'll actually use that in a GPAC meeting and allow members of the public to contribute, and we're actually going to do that here in a second as well. So we could see how that might work. You all had a suggestion as well the last meeting to consider roll call voting, and we'll actually do that again here as well, where each member of the committee will get a vote, and we'll go through the entire roll call as Christina did earlier, and give you each an opportunity to contribute. General discussions that we have, everything, all these conversations that we are having, we actually are recording, or members of our team are typing up concurrently on a virtual whiteboard, which we'll share here in a second. And as needed, we'll bring that virtual whiteboard up to confirm that we've heard you all correctly. We typically like to see your faces and not be doing a bunch of screen sharing and while the note taking is being done, but we can do that as well. And then another fun is interactive tool is actually a mapping tool as we move through the process and we're talking about location specific improvements or concerns. There'll be opportunities for you all to go and drop points on a map and let us know specifically where your input might be most beneficial. And we can talk through some of those options as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we'd love to hear from you all if there's other specific meeting interaction tools that you think will be helpful. And what worked well in other large group decision-making bodies that you've been a part of that you think should be brought to this process. And then as we do the polling and the roll call vote, and this might be, again, something that evolves, we'd love to hear from you as to when that should occur in the process. Again, to really get a better sense of how you all want this process to kind of evolve and how we make decisions together as we move forward. So with that, this is bringing back all those discussion questions, or the core ones we asked through the previous slides to give you all a frame of reference. And really the way we've kind of grouped these is the first two questions really speak to the role of the GPAC. Again, how can the GPAC best contribute to the general plan update process? And how do you find the GPAC's role relative to the general public? And the last three fit more kind of into the meeting logistics and decision-making. Again, is it okay if the meeting run longer? When should the public provide comments? As you mentioned earlier, Josh, you suggested maybe that happens earlier in the process. When should the GPAC polling or roll call be taken, again, as we just mentioned earlier, and then other interactive tools that you all might want to contribute. And we do have a poll related to the meetings running longer question that I'd love to bring up when appropriate. But at this point, I just kind of wanted to open it up to you all. And again, we're taking notes concurrently on a virtual whiteboard that we could bring up, but I wanted to open up to you all to provide your input really on any one of these questions, or if you're comfortable taking it sequentially, we can do that. So who would like to start? Have any suggestions, comments? We could also jump over to the poll and come back to these questions. Really flexible on how we kind of navigate this discussion. Yes, Bill, I see your hand raised and followed by Mary.
Hi there. Great job so far. It's a great discussion. I think what would be helpful for me, at least, to kind of understand what our role should be, would be to have a better understanding of the overall strategy relative to, say, our existing general plan, and whether the committee is going to be expected. You know, I doubt we're going to be really on a crafting mission where we're crafting the policy and the exhibits and the technical data. You know, so I would like to see what's the overall strategy relative to, you know, the elements, the policies, the goals, you know, of specifically of a general plan. You say using our general plan, our existing general plan as an example, and what it is that would be expected of us. You know, what would be useful to the team. You know, are we going to be reviewing draft content that's provided by the consultant and the city staff, or are we going to brainstorm on, you know, new goals? I mean, I just want to say I think we have a pretty fantastic general plan already, and I hope we're not completely starting over. But you know, just before we figure out what tools we need, I think it would be good to understand, you know, what it is we're going to be expected to do, and what we can provide. Thank you.
Matt has a lot of experience doing general plans with a lot of different GPACs. Do you want to talk a little bit about best practices that you've found?
Sure. So, Bill, that is the age-old question with the GPAC about what role the GPAC plays relative to this, and there's a balance. I mean, the GPAC, the general plan is a very long, detailed document, and I think the expectation is that the GPAC is not going to be, you know, in and writing the policies. However, there's lots of opportunity for the GPAC to really help shape what is in there, to do research on what best practices are, to brainstorm on some goals and policies. What we use as our starting point is this great body of work that the city already has. And so there is an existing general plan, there's specific plans, there's all of these other documents, and that together gives us a real picture of what the direction the city is going. And then we want to work with you to assess whether whether that direction is still accurate, where it's accurate and where it isn't, and what other issues there are. And so we need your help in thinking through that. Then for topics that are new topics that aren't in the existing general plan, for example, there's a new requirement for an environmental justice element. That's an area where I think we would spend a lot more time diving in with the advisory committee because it's brand new. So it'd be brainstorming policies, hearing what best practices are, and then we would compile that and ask the public questions, and then you would review the policy direction that we've come up with. So again, some is really looking at what's in the existing general plan and kind of giving it the thumbs up. And then others, it's about helping us to craft what the issues are and then what the policy approach is to doing that. So it's a hybrid. And again, I think different people you all have a tremendous expertise, including some of you who have written general plans. And so we welcome the interaction with you in order to help us do this. We want you all to be partners. with us in the process. You all are the local experts on the city. We understand the technical expertise. So we need a partner on this to do that. And then I think, again, each individual, as a kind of with engagement, some of you may want to dive in the details, and some of you may want to stay at the higher level. And so our idea, and what we've used effectively in the past, is to use smaller working groups for specific topics to dive in deep. So we might have an environmental justice working group where 5 or 6 of you, not impacting the Brown Act, but where 5 or 6 of you come together to help us brainstorm and craft what it is, how we do engagement related to that, and help us craft the policies that then goes back to the full group. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. I hope that clarified. I know it was a long answer, but it is detailed. I hope it clarified. Again, a lot of opportunity for participating in lots of different ways. And some of this we're just going to have to work out as we're moving through the process. But we're open to a lot of different things.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. Thank you very much for the question, Bill. And that point you made at the end there, Matt, I think is key. Is we're talking a lot about what this can be, and we haven't really dove in yet to what it's going to be. And I think once we move through these meetings and we start to bring some of this information forward to you and you have an opportunity to provide feedback, I hope that's going to continue to provide more clarity, but continue to bring those great questions to us, and we'll definitely try our best to answer them as we move through this process. So thank you for that, Bill. Mary, your hand is raised.
Thank you. Matt, that was a really good, thorough answer to Bill's question. And I think there's a lot of that I agree with. What I was going to say is on the first 3 questions, and I can't remember exactly how the first question was worded, but my suggestion is that you bring what you know to the meetings. You don't need to be an expert in all areas. Everyone here has something they're passionate about, something they know, and that's what you contribute. You ask questions about the rest, but if you bring what you know, then we're getting that diverse input from everyone's background. I really agree that the way you interact with the public is individually defined. I think that's the right thing. If you feel that, or maybe you're newer to town and you really want to collect information, or that, and you want to bring that forward, that seems really appropriate. But if you've lived here for a long time and you interact with all sorts of different groups, then you have some institutional knowledge or some long-term knowledge of what this place is about and what it wants to be. So I'm totally behind that. And then in terms of meetings going over, thumbs down. I'm like, okay, 9 o'clock, click. And that's just a reality of the other balance of life that's going on. So hopefully the meetings can be really organized, and people don't feel the need to say things twice, or that we can be time sensitive. And as Christina said, this may go longer, so that's okay. Let's not kill ourselves to try and get this thing done and stay up till midnight. And my suggestion is let's try public at the start, and if we like it, then we keep doing it. If we don't like it, put it at the end. But I'd like to try it at the start. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. And actually, that's a perfect segue on the timing of the meeting to our polling question. We're not going to get there yet, but just as a teaser, we're going to get to all kind of contribute to that idea together and kind of test out that tool. But thank you so much for that input. And again, all that is taken down, and we'll definitely take that into consideration as we move forward here. So thank you for that. Roger, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I'll just very quickly, I think, agree with Bill and I think Matt's response. If we're going to do additional meetings, I think I'd like it to be a working group meeting, because there's things that I know and many things that I don't. And I think that'd be the most useful than these big meetings. Try 2 of those a month, I think would be a lot. But working groups, that would be, I think, a better use and maybe a better way to integrate with the public as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Roger. Great suggestion. Jesse, I see your hand raised.
Hi, everybody. I would just agree with Roger. A small working group sounds particular topics where I know I can really add something, where my energy and where I'm conscious, given how exhausted I am with two tiny children, would be most useful probably for the staff and best use of my time. Also agree with Mary that, going over probably doesn't work for me with my crazy life, but also you guys should know, like, by being here, my husband is also essentially in the GPAC because he's putting the kids to bed. So we should honor him in this moment as well. And he might have opinions about the future of Petaluma as well. You might hear through me from him. No, but if we could find ways to do follow-up either through the tools that you guys are thinking about, through interactions with the staff, or through these smaller working groups, that would be a better use of time than going till like 10 o'clock. So just some thoughts there.
Excellent. Thank you, Jesse. Great thoughts. Thank you so much. And we'll come back and revisit all these thoughts that you all are mentioning here today. Dave, I see your hand raised. Oh, Dave, I think you might still be muted. There it is.
After 14 months of pandemic, I'd be smarter than that. I just want to support what others have said about working groups. I strongly encourage working groups, and not just for brainstorming, as the last graphic said, but for trying to build consensus among the group and then reporting out that consensus to the full group. And then I also want to comment on something Matt said a moment ago about the specific plans and master plans the city already has in place. And say that, yes, well, those do indicate something of the mindset of the city. In some cases, I think the mindset has moved beyond what the older master plans, specific plans might say. And in some cases, we maybe haven't gone far enough to implement what those plans called for. So I think we want to take those with a little bit of caution rather than just considering those fixed points in our firmament. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate the thoughts. Thank you so much. Ali, I see your hand raised next.
Hi. I also want to just echo that I think that keeping the meetings to the designated time would be appreciated. And I think I would also just hope that that the staff could and the planning team could use the website and provide resources, articles, webinars, whatever, in advance, so that the public and the GPAC members could have the context that we needed to start off the meetings on the right foot, and we could all start off from kind of a base level, and so we don't have to spend maybe as much time getting up to speed in a meeting, and so we can keep them really tight and short. Thanks.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much.
Hey, Dave, can I ask a question about that? Because
sure,
Ali, I think that's a really important point to maybe dig into a little bit deeper. There are going to be some, and I guess just having a quick conversation and maybe hearing what others have to say about this, but we can certainly run these meetings with the assumption that everyone is going to read the background information, but I know you all are busy. You're busy people. You have other things that you're doing. So, I think the question that we should address, and we can go back, we can figure this out as we're moving through the process. But, if we can start with the assumption that you've basically read all of the information that we're giving you, and start really with a brief overview and then dive into the discussion, we're going to be able to go a lot further. But there's an assumption there, which is that people are going to have the time to do it. And the other thing I want to point out is there are also going to be topics where there actually isn't that much background to read, where it's just questions we want you to think about, or maybe activities to go, like, walk around the downtown and tell us what you like and don't like. So there might be activities, and so we want you to do that as well. But if we can dive in and not do a lot of presenting, I think that it probably makes it easier for us, and maybe makes it so that you all can get through the topics sooner. But I'm curious what other people think about that.
Well, I'm not sure. Can I respond to that just quickly?
Sure.
I think you've got a group of very, very dedicated people here. So if we're provided resources, I think, I don't think that people will be able to make time to do like a master class on each topic. But I think if there's some general context or assignments or things to kind of get the conversation started, I think people will be able to do that. I think that we do need the promise from the staff and the planning group that the resources will be provided before, the day before, because it's just not possible for us to all log on and do the assignment. Like, I didn't even get to create my Padlet account because I didn't check my personal email yesterday. So, I mean, I think that it needs to be really, you need to be considerate of our time, but I think we'll put the time in if the resources are there.
Yeah, thank you for that follow-up, Ali, and definitely understood. We definitely want to give you all plenty of time, and we love that you're planning geeks and want to dive in deep into the information, and we'll give you that information. And you all could kind of dig in as far as you want to. So I appreciate those thoughts, and we definitely will strive to get you information as early as possible and available. Janice, I see your hand raised.
I'd like to see a commitment that we actually have the information maybe 5 days before the meeting, because a day before doesn't really work well. And then the other thing is, will we have breakout groups during the meetings, or are we just going to be all together, or can we have breakout groups to come up with some decisions or agreements among groups?
For sure. That is definitely, well, to your first point, we would definitely strive to get you stuff earlier than the day before. And we apologize with the Padlet. I'll take responsibility for that. I suggested it go out a day before only so it doesn't get lost in your emails, because I know you all are busy, to just give you access to that one resource really quickly, recognizing that we're not asking for any additional information to be added to the Padlet, but just to log on. But definitely hear your suggestions, and we'll get you that information sooner as well. And to your suggestion about small groups, Janice, that is definitely something we're really excited about, bringing to these meetings to allow for those focused discussions, and at times like allowing you all to join whatever group that you're most interested in to talk about a specific topic that you're most interested in, and bring that information then back to the larger group. And that can happen definitely in meetings. It could happen subsequent to the GPAC meetings as well, through these smaller working groups. So that definitely is something that we're considering. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
And I think another thing is, as far as voting, I'd like to see transparency. And if we're voting on something, you can do a thumbs up, and then that's for the first one is you agree. And the second, everybody puts their thumbs down. And then the second one is if you don't agree. Just keep it simple. But I personally don't like a vote that people can't see, because I need to know what other people are thinking and why they're thinking. And if I don't know how they vote, then I'm in the dark with my fellow colleagues.
And that's a really interesting, Dave, you mind if I jump in?
Sure.
That's a really interesting point, Janice. And there are kind of pros and cons to both approaches, and we're going to try them both out today, and everybody can get a feel for them. Yes, it's great for transparency to do a roll call vote. On the other hand, because folks aren't elected to this body, there isn't that same accountability to the public as there would be with city council. Anonymous voting, you're right, you don't know what other folks are thinking quite as directly, but the benefit to it is that, if you're later on in the alphabet, you don't begin to feel increasing pressure to vote with everybody else. And so anonymous voting, like what we do with our political elections, gives folks the opportunity to give their true opinion that they might otherwise not want to share. So we'll try them all out, and everybody can see how they feel about them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Janice. Thanks for that, Christina. Josh, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really appreciating this discussion. I wanted to echo support for keeping these meetings as on schedule as possible, recognizing that sometimes things will go over. I also am totally open to extracurriculars like workshops and breakout rooms and things like that. I would love to see as much engagement opportunities as possible for various committee members, knowing, of course, some people don't necessarily have that much additional time to give, but having the opportunities at least would be great. The other thing that I wanted to add was also echoing Janice's point about just really appreciating being explicit and being able to see sort of each individual's directionality on an issue, and being able to see votes rather than having them be anonymous. But on the whole, I feel really good about the direction that we seem to be going here. So thank you for this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, I mean, Janice, you mentioned something that we've tried in meetings too, where it might not necessarily be a sequential roll call, where we literally pose the question, ask for yays and nays, and you could do the simple thumbs up physically or use the your little graphics to do it that way as well. So maybe there's different ways we can kind of test that out as we move through the process and simplify it like you suggested.
Yeah, if I could just very briefly respond,
Sure,
there's one
sure.
of the one lightweight thing that we can do. So for instance, earlier we talked about possibly having chat or something with recognizing their Brown Act considerations that would have to work through there. One thing that might be useful for us is, I know Zoom has built in like reaction emojis. You know, you can not only just like raise your thumb up or lower, put thumb down on camera, but you know, you could also say go slower or go faster or yes, I agree. Those might be useful ways that we can visibly interact with the contents of the meeting and have that be, you know, visible to the public as well as each other.
Great suggestion, Josh. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. Great idea. Excellent. So before we move into our first little poll here, I just want to provide space from those that I haven't heard from yet, either Yancy or Matt or Panama or Phil or Chris. Just want to provide you all space to contribute to this verbally if you'd like before we move into the polling exercise that we're doing. I just want to give you a second here if you had any other suggestions. Yes, Phil.
Just one suggestion, perhaps in terms of public comment, one option is to have 15 minutes of public comment or some time period of public comment during the middle of the meeting, and then have public comment at the end of the meeting.
Great. Thanks for that suggestion, Phil. You know, maybe we could just, this is kind of off the cuff, but that public comment piece, is there, that's come up a few times and it sounds like you all are suggesting maybe providing some space up front. Could we, I'll just pose that question now. Any other thoughts on that in particular, on when public comment you think should happen? Yes, Janice.
No, sorry.
No, okay. Aaron, yes.
Well,
yeah, so I mean, there's no real like set thing, right? So we could always offer people to speak in the beginning and at the end too. Like if
Give them
someone
both
needs
options.
to be able to speak to it but can't stay the whole meeting, like this is a privilege to be able to sit through this too. Like not everybody has it. And I would hate to be, honestly, the same format as everyone, making people wait until midnight to have their public comment kind of thing. So I want to be the exception to that rule if we can.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Aaron. Yes, Yancy.
I don't know how the format's going to go and how many topics we're going to be covering during a meeting, but another thing that might be helpful is if we do the public comment at the beginning, right, for everything that's on the agenda, and then while we're discussing, also have a period of public comment in the middle so that the public knows kind of where we're at as a GPAC, and then we can also take into account like other considerations that are coming up, and then continue the conversation.
Great. Thank you for that suggestion. Excellent. Any other thoughts from you all to share? Yes, Chris.
I tend to agree that public comment in the beginning is great. I'm wondering, as we go through this long process, between meetings or after meetings, if the public wants to comment, is there going to be opportunities for that kind of input? Because I know for myself, in the moment, sometimes I know I'm not totally articulate, and I don't want to come on half-baked, but maybe tomorrow I'll go, oh, that's what I wanted to say. Are there going to be opportunities for that for the public?
Excellent question. I know Christina has been thinking a lot about this. So Christina, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So there are a bunch of different ways for folks from the public to reach out. You know, they can always email me and I can forward stuff to the team and we can include it. I don't know if any of you got to see the meeting summary, but we included a few follow-up notes in there, you know, because of how we reacted to the last meeting. Also, one of the things that we are working on, and I know that Janice was bringing this up, is allowing the public to contact you guys more directly. And I know that there are a lot of you and you might not want to be giving out your personal emails. And so one of the things that the city is currently working on right now is giving all committee and commission members a City of Petaluma email address so that folks can contact you that way. And then if there's a records request, which there are occasionally, you're not digging through your personal email to find those, you know, that communication, and that will provide a more direct connection.
And Christina, can I add into that too, the website, looking for feedback loops on the website. You know, we have food for thought section. So if somebody wants to share an article, they can submit that and it can go up on the website. So we're always looking for ways to also use, you know, the technology we have. So outside of a direct email to Christina or myself or Peggy, or, you know, the many loops that we get, feedback from the public, also looking for ways to have the ability to respond to things on the website as well.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And then of course, we're going to be having a survey and we're going to be having community events. And so there will be more and more and more opportunities for folks to engage either as reactions to these meetings or just separate meetings.
Excellent. Thank you both. And thank you for the question, Chris. Roger, I see your hand raised.
Just maybe quickly state the obvious. We've had some people say they want to keep the meeting to 2.5 hours. I'm probably in that camp. If we start offering public comment twice, then I think we run the risk of the same people speaking twice, is the way it works. I work for a public agency. And if we give 20 people 2 minutes each twice, so it starts, we start having conflicts between getting through the rest of the agenda. So, and I'll go with the flow, whatever the group, and willing to try different things, and maybe we won't see so much, but I worry that then we won't get through what else we need to get through. And we aren't the city council, so I do want public comment. I think unless you can cap the time, which is sometimes hard to do when people are lined up. So just a thought, have conflicting things we want to accomplish in one meeting.
Yeah, great point, Roger. It's that trade-off, right? Yeah, exactly, because it does add more time potentially to the meeting. So that's definitely something we should consider. And maybe part of that, as you suggested, is maybe the time is a bit shorter, but split between 2 different times in the meeting where folks that contribute. That's a great point. Because these are meetings, as you suggested, that are really meant for the GPAC to have plenty of time to discuss and contribute to the process, and there's subsequent meetings for the public to also be involved and be the focus of those meetings as we go out to the public. So we should take that into consideration as well. But I appreciate that, Roger. Janice, I think I saw your hand raised and it went down. All set. Okay. So if you all are okay with it, we're now going to actually take a live poll since we've been talking so much about that. And I think we've heard loud and clear from you all that you definitely would like to keep the meetings to the 9 o'clock time frame in 2.5 hours. But we did prepare a poll that we're going to ask you all as GPAC members, and we're going to ask members of the public that are here with us today to weigh in about how long these meetings could potentially be. So with that, we're going to ask you to bring up this website, and it's easiest to probably do it on your mobile phone if you have that available, or on a separate screen. Or a separate window, excuse me, so it's easy to access. But I want to ask you to go to www.menti.com. That's MENTI.com. And once you're there, you are going to punch in this following code. And I'm going to bring that up again in the next slide, and it will be up as we bring the actual poll up as well. So if you miss it, no worries. But that code is 2104140. When you get in there, you'll see a question posed, and I'm going to go ahead and start that here shortly. So again, there's a couple different options to access it. If you do have your mobile phone, you can bring it right up to the screen right now and hit this QR code, and that hopefully will take you directly to the website as well, just another option. Or just going to menti.com and putting in 2104140. And I hope you all had a chance to get on there with that. I'm going to stop sharing screen. And again, this code will be available when we bring up the actual poll itself. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up here. And we're going to try this out. Oh, look at this. You guys have jumped all over it. Fantastic. I see the results already populating. So the first question, as you could probably see, is just a quick icebreaker, or as Matt called it earlier, the ice cream breaker, just to get your thoughts on what your favorite flavor ice cream is. And awesome to see that you all are already jumping all over this. I have to admit, I came up with the flavors, and these are probably my top 4 or 5 flavors, but if there's others that I didn't think of, throw it in the mix. But it looks like salted caramel so far has taken the lead, followed by mint chip and vanilla. So, okay, so cool. So this is just a really creative way, or just a quick way to get you all familiar, get you on the site, and give you a chance to contribute. And again, this is meant for all members of the public that have joined us here, as well as you as GPAC members, just to dive in and take a spin. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the real question now. Oh, it looks like mint chip is coming in close to second.
It's surprising how many wrong answers are on the screen.
What's your favorite, Panama? Go ahead, get it out there. What's your favorite?
Mint chip.
Mint chip? Well done. That's my favorite as well. That's my favorite as well. We're getting close, though.
Panama, do you feel embarrassed at all having to talk to us about your favorite? It's nice to have some anonymity sometimes.
This is why it's an icebreaker. This is great. I'm glad you spoke up, Panama. That's excellent. So there'll be more opportunities like this for us to continue to get to know each other. But so now on to the main question. So we've talked a lot about this during this meeting, and it sounds like you all as GPAC members are very interested in keeping this meeting as kind of close to that 9 o'clock time frame, or right on that 9 o'clock time frame, as we had started about a 2.5-hour meeting. So this question is posing, should meetings end earlier at 8:30 and only be 2 hours, which would be very difficult given all the information that we're hoping to share, but we want to put that out there. Should the meetings end promptly at 9? Again, I think that's something that we heard from you all that you're very interested in. Is it okay if meetings run slightly past 9? Looks like that one is now taking the lead. Or let the meetings run as long as needed. So again, this is really initially, this is all members of the public and GPAC getting to weigh in. And then after we see the results here, we'd actually like to test out a roll call vote to get final confirmation from you all as GPAC members of how long you want these meetings to go. Even though I think we have a pretty good sense that it's looking like potentially 9 o'clock, we really want to get some more confirmation on that. So glad you all had a chance to get in here and play around with this. Looks like plenty of you got a chance to weigh in, and currently it looks like ending at 9 and going slightly over 9 are going neck and neck. Slightly over 9 is in the lead, but this was great. I mean, this is again a first opportunity to do an exercise with everyone in the room, GPAC members and members of the community, and we'll continue to use resources like this as we move through it. Oftentimes, it'll just be kind of polling GPAC members because this is a GPAC meeting. Other times we did here, it'll allow members of the public to weigh in as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here again. And if you all are okay with it, we're going to test out this roll call vote idea as well, and quickly run through the roll call and just get a sense from you all. So I'm going to just pose a question just to make this simpler. Should the meetings end sharply at 9 p.m. as initially planned? And then I'm going to ask Christina to run the roll call and get a response to that question. Does that work?
Yes. And Paul, are you going to be recording these responses? Yes. Okay. Great. Dave Alden.
No.
Panama Bartholomew.
No.
Stephanie Blake.
So can I pose that question again? I just want to make sure we all understand. So the question was, should these meetings end promptly at 9? Did I say that correctly? Okay. And Dave and Panama, you're suggesting it could go longer. Okay, I just want to make sure that was clear. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Keep going, Christina.
No worries. Stephanie, I see your box. Are you able to respond? Guess not. Phil Boyle.
No.
Matt Brown.
No.
Aaron Chmielewski.
Sure. And this is going to take forever.
Ilya Diaz.
Yes.
Mary Dooley. Mary, did you respond on mute?
I did. Yes, they should. Yes, end.
Sierra Downey.
No.
Jesse Feller.
Yes.
Allie Gaylord.
Yes.
Yancy Jacobo.
Yes.
Roger Leventhal.
Yes.
Ileana Madrigal. If I don't hear somebody, I have to come back and look for their face. Is Ileana with us? Ileana, did you respond on mute?
Yes, but it's a no.
Thank you. Roberto Mares.
No.
Chris Rebelo.
No.
Bill Reinhardt.
No.
John Shribs.
No.
Josh Simmons.
No.
Janice Cater-Thompson.
No.
Bill Wolpert.
I think that should be our goal. Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you for that. So with that, I believe we tallied 14 no's. Of the 19 or 20, I believe, that were polled through this roll call vote. So it sounds like the majority of those that were asked that question were okay with us going beyond 9 p.m. if needed. So with that, any other kind of follow-up thoughts to that point? Did I miss anything? Yes, Mary.
Just to follow up, one of the types of people, or let me say this right, a demographic that's always difficult to get involved in any sort of committee is parents, our parents. And parents represent children as well. So there's no children on this committee. So I just wanted to note that it can be a limiting factor. So that's one of the reasons why I think we should keep it at 9. And again, I suppose if you cannot stay past 9, you can leave.
That is, that great point, Mary. And thank you for that. We definitely want to respect folks' time and recognize that you have lives outside of these GPAC meetings. So thank you for that. Janice, I see your hand raised. Oh, Janice, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry. Is there a time frame? Are we talking 15 minutes? Are we talking a half an hour? Are we talking an hour? Because I don't really want to go an hour over. I don't really want to go 30 minutes. But if we're in a discussion and it's going to be another 15 minutes, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't really want to go beyond, because I see this in the city council and that's not where I want to go till midnight.
Yeah, that's a great point, Janice. And definitely we wouldn't intend on going all-nighters, pulling all-nighters as part of this process, but allowing the conversation to continue and not necessarily have to cut it off at 9, and it sounds like most of you are fairly open to that. I think another way to look at this too is depending on the topic and the amount of information that we might be bringing forward, there might be times that we'll let you know moving into a meeting that a particular meeting might run a bit longer, just based on the amount of information that we think we might want to cover, and give you that heads up. And it sounds like you all are open to that possibly happening. And obviously for those that can't join for the entire time, you're obviously welcome to jump off whenever is convenient for you. And everything that we're talking about will be recorded, and maybe we can have a chance to follow up with those that don't have a chance to stay on longer as a compromise. So appreciate those thoughts. So let's go to Jesse next, followed by John.
Yeah. Actually, I would just love to get to see hands of who has children in Petaluma, even if they're grown up, to get to know you guys better, because that's why I'm here. I mean, other than I'm a total urban planning policy geek, because I really care about my kids being able to live here. So I have 2 kids are right here. I know others do, but yeah. So, I mean, I completely hear you, Mary, but I think we can bring those perspectives to bear. That's a good point of the youth perspective of the future.
Appreciate that, Jesse. And Jesse, if you actually do want to ask folks to use the raise hand feature to answer that question, we can come back to that for who has kids. John, let's go to you next, followed by Roger.
Yeah, I did vote for myself. Because I'm retired and I have lots of time, I can go over because I'm a night owl, but I also want to respect all the folks that have a lot more time constraints. And I would think that, like Robert's Rules of Orders usually say 51% ruling, but this is a particular issue. I think we need like 75 to 80% to kind of agree if we're going to go past a certain time limit. I know going past 11 o'clock, there was agreement at council. Did we go past 11? Yes, they did, and went to midnight. If we could say, yeah, let's shoot for 9. And if we could go to 9:15, maybe, if there's discussion going on, we need to wrap it up, but just give a fit. But there needs to be an absolute time limit at the very end here. As Janice was saying earlier about not doing a half hour, hour over. If it goes 5 minutes past, 10 minutes past, I think that might be okay with most folks. But I think a half hour or more would be not okay. And I would agree with that. I would want to back off and say, well, then just hold it to 9 then. If to respect all the folks who really need to put their kids to bed and do other things. Thank you.
Excellent point. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. And yeah, definitely something we could all kind of navigate here together. Roger.
Yeah, just I'll just echo the last 2. The written poll said a little past 9 or open-ended, and I would have been fine with a little past 9, but I think there needs to be, I've been to bike pen meetings that go hour and a half over, and after 3.5 hours, I started shutting down. So that a little okay.
Yeah.
But, it was kind of open-ended the way it was asked. So
yeah, good point, Roger. Yeah, that's why I was hoping to get some of this clarification. So this is really helpful. But yeah, great point. I think we'd all probably be passed out by 11:30 or 12 o'clock. So we'll try to move through this at a pace that is kind of respectful of all our other schedules.
Dave, can I just reflect on that? It was just so interesting to do the Menti poll where we could have shades of gray and multiple options, and then to do the roll call voting where it was just thumbs up or thumbs down. It was so interesting, even though I had some ideas about how the differences were, to kind of see that play out. And just like Roger said, it was like, well, I have an opinion about how much longer, but that's not part of my vote.
That's definitely a great point. Definitely a great point. And that's why the discussion is so important, right? It's hard to kind of truly understand the why when we do some of the polling. So having this conversation with you all is great. It's great. So Yancy, I see your hand raised.
Just to piggyback off of what Christina was saying, in reflection of what we just did, I would have loved to have this discussion prior to doing the roll call vote.
Great point. Great point. Thank you. Okay. So the last item I had for you all, unless there's any other thoughts here, was to get back on the Padlet and actually ask your suggestions about future meeting topics. and rather than bring up a slide again, I think you all have navigated to Padlet at this point if you're going to be on Padlet. So instead, I'm going to bring up the Padlet screen, and really, we're asking this question just to get your general thoughts on how or what type of topics that you think might be most important. We've obviously heard a bit here tonight about housing and how the housing element process is working, but the general plan itself tackles multiple different topics, everything from land uses to recreation and parks and community character and sustainability, and transportation and health and resilience and social environmental equity and the economy. There's a whole host of topics that kind of fall under the larger umbrella of a general plan. But we really want to just get a quick kind of sense from you all of what topics you find most important and what you definitely want to make sure is brought forward to the GPAC as we move through this process. So with that, again, if you don't have an opportunity to be on the Padlet digitally, no problem at all. You could definitely use the hand raise and we'll take your comments and type them up for you and throw it on the board. And we'll continue to revisit this question as we move through the process together. So with that, I hope you all can see the Padlet board up, and I just basically moved us over a bit to the right to provide you space to add your comments to this question. And I see Panama has just jumped in. His suggestion is the reality of construction costs and ways to contain them through quality planning. Thank you for that, Panama. Great suggestion. Any other thoughts that you all would like to share, either on Padlet or verbally, that we can add on to Padlet for you? I see folks actively getting onto Padlet. And just show of hands for anyone that still doesn't have access to Padlet that would like it. We can make sure that we get that link over to you. I see Josh has put in affordable housing. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, we did send the correct link out if you guys want to recheck your email.
And again, feel free to throw stuff in the mix verbally as well. So far, we have a couple ideas here.
There's some notes that are being added that are sort of off to the left of your screen.
Oh, thank you for the heads up, Josh. I'm trying to zoom in as far as I can so everyone could follow along. Oh, to the left here, I'm going the wrong direction. Was this one? Here's one. Maze of limitations. Thank you, Josh. The challenge of doing stuff virtually, you want to make sure everyone could see it. Excellent.
Help us move them too if you see that happening.
You can't move anyone's that's not yours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Paul, I'm going to ask you to help move those suggestions over for me. Thank you so much. So let's see. I see a bunch here populated. This is great. So Dave suggestions zoning or retrofitting sprawl. Jesse has a whole host of topics which are fantastic. Mitigating and adapting to climate change, climate justice, extreme heat, active transportation, access to nature, 10-minute walk to parks for all, play and surprise, disability access and aging in place, racial justice, and future of fairgrounds. Fantastic. Thank you, Jesse. Let's see. Sierra has, what does a just transition in Petaluma look or feel like? Mary suggested preservation of open space and natural environment. Looks like Allie has water or wastewater. Let's see. I see changing transportation modes, Allie noted. Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here to see if we can capture some more. And we'll zoom back in here. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. And for those, if I have missed one of your comments, please do feel free again to kind of verbalize it here, but I think I see everything on the screen here. Access to free activities for recreation, Ali is noted. Panama suggested 21st century post-COVID economic development and city finances. Looks like Janice has transportation, bike, affordable housing, and the future of the fairgrounds and water. We have making housing affordable for a diversity of residents. Jesse's awesome list continues with drought mitigation, small business support, 15-minute neighborhoods. This is fantastic. And just a note for you all that are maybe having a hard time seeing this or can't follow along as members of the public, there will be a snapshot of this taken and included in the summary of this meeting as well. So we'll make sure that you all have access to all this information as well. Ileana has put in long-term wildfire prevention standards, rezoning, transit-oriented development standards. Excellent. Thank you, Ileana. Fantastic. There's so many great suggestions that ideally I would be grouping these and color coding them, but you all are throwing in so many great suggestions at once. It's hard to keep up. But I'll ask Paul to help out with that if you can, Paul, as we move through this. Let's see, quality of life planning, best practices. Thank you, Panama.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch. So basically when we're logging in, it's taking us to the extreme bottom left corner. And there's a whole bunch of people down there with cards all the way. Keep going down, like all the way down.
If any of your things are down there, if you notice, you can move them over for him too. So that way you're.
Yeah, you could bring them back up to the top. I apologize for that. I don't know why.
That's where Padlet puts us to start.
Oh, that's not good. Good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for the heads up. We'll have to fix that glitch. It should be bringing you straight to this section of the Padlet, but technology, sometimes there are glitches. Let's see, so trails and greenways, dedicated greenway trails, floodplain development, equitable justice systems, what that looks like for the community and community-based solutions. Excellent. This is fantastic. And you all that are on the Padlet as GPAC members, you can move around the screen freely and see things and definitely mention things that I don't see as you just did, Panama. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to follow along as much as I can here for members of the public. We have water as a major future limitation. Let's see, making Washington Street pedestrian and bike friendly and attractive on both sides of 101. Seeking out partners for kind of development we want. So proactive development, Josh is proposing. Thank you for that. Wow, so many fantastic ideas. And look at that. Nice work, Mary. I don't know if you just changed the color of that or that's Paul, but we're gonna hope to color code some things here and group them. But so what I see here is definitely some support around housing and affordable housing and equity. There's some conversation around transportation and access. There's definitely some interest in preservation of open space and recreation, being proactive in development and preservation. Let's see, pedestrian and bike friendliness again with the transportation piece and transit-oriented development. Spaces that are accessible for youth. So you all have probably seen that as well, as we're kind of grouping this into transportation, housing, preservation, and also environmental kind of preservation as well along that front, and making sure that what we do provides safety and wildfire prevention. And Jesse, your list continues on, which is awesome, which I think we've touched on a lot of this. Racial justice, social justice is a topic that looks like is of great importance to you all. And that actually is one that we were hoping to cover very soon, coming up potentially in the next meeting. And it sounds like that is an interest of you all as well.
Hey, Dave, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
You want to just read a few that are popping up in the bottom corner? I know they're over there.
I don't see anything else in the bottom corner. Is there?
One from Ileana that just got moved over, finishing the implementation of the IZO and removing single family zoning.
Great, thank you. Keep going if you see any others that I missed.
Pedestrian friendly downtown from Yancey. Multiple pedestrian and bike trails connecting East and West Petaluma from Janice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anything else that we've missed? And sorry, all the tricky thing about this, I don't want to zoom too far out and lose members of the public. So I'm trying to stay at a scale here that you all could read. So thank you for adding those into the mix. This is fantastic. This gives us a whole lot to think about. And clearly you all have many passions that you would like to see covered as part of the GPAC process. Anything else that I might have missed here, Christina, as you're on there? And if not, I also want to this is great to see visually. If you all want to kind of follow up on anything that you've added on the board to continue to kind of add some more flavor to this, definitely feel free to do that now. But in essence, we don't necessarily need to dive into all of these right now. This gives us a great understanding of where some of your interests lie, and is something that we'll include as a summary of this great information that we've gained at today's meeting, and continue to bring that forward to you all at future meetings, and to decide together generally kind of when we want this information to be brought forward, and Matt and his team will kind of create the synergy between how that will also fit into the general plan process. And all of this does fit directly in line with the elements of the general plan that we're planning on covering. To that end, Matt, is there anything that you want to add to that context of kind of how you all have been thinking about framing kind of the next steps and the topics that are being brought forth to the GPAC? Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's quite all right. This is a great list and really does help us out for direction. I think just kind of thinking ahead, our next few meetings are going to be a combination of background information to try and bring everyone up to speed on some of this, on the kind of what is planning and what are general plans. And we'll give you a lot of background information, so there's not a lot of presenting. But then brainstorming on all of these different topics about what are the issues that the city is facing now, and then what are the opportunities that you see for the future. And so having these topics is really helpful as a starting point to get to that.
Excellent.
There are a few more comments piled up on the left, and I can't even separate them because they're starting to pile. Here's Janice's, and I think some folks are moving their own.
Yeah, ADAH friendly community. Let's see. Aaron brought back up the meeting time. If staff and consultants do have leg room to provide materials ahead of time. Thank you for that. Adopting long-term policies for deed restricted affordable housing. Thank you, Allie. Bring in new businesses. That is good for us. Thank you, Josh. Wow. I'm going to have to find a larger board, a resource to gather all your fantastic input. This is great. This is really awesome. So as you all could see and experience as we're going through this, the challenge is obviously you all as GPAC members are on the board. You can see the entire board and see it as it populates. It is a challenge sometimes to then be able to show that back out to the community in a manner that they can kind of see on the screen. But I want to reiterate, this is basically a vision wall, right? That we would ideally do in person and see all this kind of populating on a board and folks who kind of walk around the room and see that together. But this is the next best thing. We do it virtually here, and then we bring that back to you all as part of the summary so that you can see every single one of these comments. And we could use it again as a guide as we move through this process to make sure that all these great ideas are brought forward. So thank you so much for jumping in and providing all these great ideas. It looks like folks have logged on through the link and are super creative and have actually added resources to other websites and links, which is fantastic.
That was me trying to move Janice's comment.
Oh, is that you? I'm like, wow, that's fabulous how that just happened. Okay, thank you, Christina. Thank you for that. Bill suggested we'd love to see a strategy summary to better understand how we can all address these important topics in the context of the various general plan elements. Great point, Bill. And I know that that will be kind of a constant theme throughout this process. And as we get to future meetings, we'll hope to see that kind of take shape. So thank you for bringing that point up. Josh here just mentioned bring in new businesses. That is good for us. I think maybe that was a duplicative that I missed earlier. Ali suggested city-sponsored maker spaces or food vendor spaces to allow lower income individuals to start new businesses. Awesome. Affordable childcare, fantastic. Assume GPAC is prepared for the meeting. That is our responsibility. Thank you for that, Mary. Let's see. I think some of these were from the previous. Excellent. Okay, you all get an A+ for contribution. This is awesome. So again, I want to provide space for folks that maybe didn't get on Padlet or want to verbalize anything else that maybe is missing here, a topic that you don't see that you would like to see covered. Again, we can add that for you. Wow, this is fantastic. Yeah, so this is definitely starting to group into those higher level topics that we referenced earlier. Team that is on Padlet, project team, anything else that I might have missed that you'd like to highlight? No?
I think this is great. This is great, and it's so great to see all of these ideas come in so quickly. And thanks, Dave, for working to summarize it. We will definitely go through everything, offline so that we can process appropriately. And this will all be in the meeting summary.
Exactly. Thanks so much. So I now am. So this is fantastic. I'm super excited about continuing to do these great activities with you all. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing screen, and I believe we are now going to transition to public comments. So I'm going to bring back up that slide and ask Eric to help us navigate public comment. So as a reminder for those members of the public that would like to provide public comment, if you can go ahead and use the raise hand feature. I see a couple populating now. We're going to bring up a timer and move through that process here together. If you can bear with me here 1 second, let me get the screen situated. All right. Okay, so Eric, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Dave. Up first, I see Barry Busowitz. Barry, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself as well.
Thanks, Eric. And thank you to Dave Javid and the consultants and the council and the public. I think this meeting has restored my confidence in our capacity to have a really good public process and deliberation process in our city, and I thank you all.
Thank you so much. And sorry to interrupt, but I apologize for this annoying ticking sound. I'm trying to figure out how to turn the volume off on our little timer. Thank you for that, Barry.
Dave, for what it's worth, I couldn't hear the annoying ticking.
Oh, cool. That's just on my side. Excellent. I'm glad I shouldn't have even said anything then. All right, I'll hand it back over to you, Eric.
Thanks, Dave. Up next is Susan Kirks. Susan, I've allowed you to speak. You'll also need to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. I would like to see, with the process that you all just completed, I think it would possibly come under racial justice. I'm not certain. I would describe it as a review of nomenclature in the city of Petaluma related to buildings, streets, trails, parks, anything that's named. And specifically, I would like to see worked into the general plan process a review of renaming the Lynch Creek Trail. In the city of Petaluma, you have Lynch Creek Way, which is a street. And then outside the city limits, there's Lynch Road. And of course, there's Lynch Creek. But Lynch Creek Trail is one of the major thoroughfares for pedestrian and bicycle use. And the term lynch is used every time these entities are named. Imagine what it's like to hear that as a non-Caucasian individual and the trauma that that can bring up for people. I'm white and I know how it impacts me. So I would very much appreciate it if your committee had the courage to review. I do know that the Lynch Creek Trail, I know that there was the Frank Lynch family, I think, in Petaluma, but I think in terms of our modern day life and welcoming new residents to Petaluma and racial diversity, it's something that needs to be reviewed and hopefully changed to a more inspiring name. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Up next is Paloma. Paloma, I'll ask that you state your name for the record as well. I've unmuted you. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Paloma. I am really interested in the issue of brain drain in Petaluma. Those of you who are not familiar, brain drain is sort of when you have people get educated and then leave. There's a lot of sort of tech diaspora or tech, like everybody's like getting all these like really awesome degrees at like the local universities, getting started at the local junior college, and then they move away to the South Bay to go into tech. And I really wish there were more tech jobs up here so that the people could kind of stay living with their family and still be involved in the community. I know a lot of people, my close friends included, are really sad that they can't stay in the community that they grew up in because they can't find jobs up here. And I mean, like, boohoo, tech people, it's so sad. But the problem is that we're not benefiting from those salaries. We're not benefiting from their ability to contribute into the community. And that means that with these raising prices, the only people who are going to be moving in are people who don't need to work and who have a lot of money. And I don't know if that's the exclusive people we want moving into the area. So I would really like people thinking about affordable housing and about being able to retain in the community the kind of people that we spend a lot of energy raising, educating, having contribute to this area and loving this area. I'd like to keep them in the area and allow them to flourish and build a family and grow this community. So I think that could be a really interesting issue. And yeah, I would just like to say that y'all are doing a great job and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paloma. I don't see any hands raised after Paloma at this time. Oh, there's one more. Regina Leone, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Regina. I'm an attorney, and 16 years ago, I helped my mother start a store in downtown Petaluma. She submitted a letter to your committee earlier today, which I saw on the agenda, and I'd like to suggest that your committee is very cognizant of how to support small, locally owned businesses as you press forward with your work. The past year has been absolutely devastating for the downtown community. A lot of businesses have had to close their doors because of the economic conditions caused by the pandemic. So thank you all for your time and your work. I got to go because my kids are now screaming and not going to sleep. And thank you. Bye-bye. Honey,
Thank you, Regina. I don't see any further hands raised at this time.
Great. So I'll take it back from you then, Eric. Thank you all, members of the public, for sticking with us through these 2.5 hours, and we're coming right down to the final stretch here, 9 o'clock. But before we close and talk a little bit about next steps, we just want to provide one final segment for you all as GPAC members to provide us with any final thoughts that you might have on the information that was shared here tonight, what you've heard, anything else before we close the evening here together. Just want to provide you with that space. And Chris, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, great meeting. I'm just wondering, to keep us all engaged and active, if there's on the city's website, like when people post new articles, or if there's some new development, or if there's a conversation, that there'll be notices sent out. I don't check the Plan Petaluma website on a daily basis. Maybe I should more often, but if there's a way that I can know, oh, somebody posted an article, or this is happening. So there's sort of a sandbox where we can check in, and I think it would help us, it would help me think ahead and also just stay more engaged. Thanks.
Great suggestion, Chris. Thank you. Christina or team, did you want to respond to that?
That's a fantastic idea, Chris. And Chris, I want everybody to know, I want to really appreciate Chris for sending us a bunch of great articles that are going up on the website. So if she checks, she'll see those, but we would love more of those. It's really interesting to think about having some kind of digest that would come out, like if there's a general plan website update. You know, there is the city weekly newsletter, and I noticed that there were some notices about the general plan and so on in there. But we'll certainly look into that and think a little bit more. And if there are any other ideas about how we can do that, please send them our way. And also, as we get going more with more events, we'll figure out a way to send you guys more regular updates.
Yeah, and Christina, we might be able to look using our constant contacts. If somebody's signed, and we'll have to explore this, but whether there's a way to do that. So when there are updates to the general plan website, if you're on that constant contact, subgroup, you get a notice. So we could explore that.
Yes, thank you. We'll have to balance keeping everyone informed and not blitzing everyone. Too many emails.
Great. Thank you both for that. I see a lot of thumbs up, so appreciate that. Aaron, I see your hand raised.
I was just going to bounce off that same idea from Chris, and then talking about like constant contact and having updates. Just going back to something like Slack, where you can have alerts integrated into there. So if someone put something onto the website and you had it linked in a way that it could alert anyone in that channel, so there's no emails, there's still the alert for the people to see that and be able to review it. There's quite a few tools out there like that we could try and streamline it, because again, having to put all this material together is hard enough, and to then be able to distribute it, make sure there's no missing parts, and then update as we go. Sometimes that might be a simpler way, but thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. We definitely want to make it as efficient as possible. So continue to bring those great suggestions, and we'll continue to explore and find more efficient ways to both share information with you all and have you share back with us. Josh, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. I just want to express my gratitude for this meeting. This feels to me like the reset that the orientation and the reset that certainly I was looking for. I wanted to just echo a couple things that I heard in public comment that I think are absolutely worthy for us to reflect on at some point. I think it would be great to revisit place names that maybe no longer reflect our values, or maybe they never really did. And also to the comments on brain drain. I know we have some suggestions there about economic development. It seems like we should try to do everything we can to allow service sector workers to live here and make it easier for them to live here. We also need to create better jobs and have an economy that's a little more diversified. So I would love to pour some energy into that. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Excellent. So I don't see any hand raised, and respecting your time. We're right at 9 o'clock, so we're hoping to wrap this up on time. I'm going to hand it back over to Christina to talk a little bit about next steps, and then we'll go ahead and close the meeting.
Thank you. So we have an upcoming GPAC meeting approximately a month from now on June 17th. The planning team is currently in the process of developing pages and pages and pages of existing conditions analysis and white papers that are going to be informing our existing conditions report. I don't know that I'm going to say that's not all going to be done by next time, but we'll probably have some rich material for you to go through. We'll have draft GPAC agreements that we'll summarize from this time, and we'll get a little bit more deeply into brainstorming issues and opportunities. Nat, do you have anything else that you want to call out in terms of the topics for the next couple meetings? And I do have to preface Matt's statement by saying that chaotic link issues aside, we put a lot of thought into this meeting, and we didn't really get to the next ones yet. So this is in the spirit of brainstorming. Matt, please go ahead.
So in the spirit of brainstorming, I get to start the brainstorming. We can certainly ask, have a little conversation, or you can shoot some emails between meetings for ideas. But some of the other topics that are coming up is, or at least we'd be interested in if you want to hear about it. One is to have a kind of a planning 101 on background for those who don't know a lot about general plans, about what is a general plan, what does it do, how does it relate to other planning documents, and then what documents are in the city right now, so we can all sort of form a good foundation for where we're starting from. We also wanted to talk about sort of the history of the planning profession and sort of the past discriminatory and racist practices that are part of the planning profession as part of the foundation, because a lot of the land use decisions we see around us are really based on those practices. And so there's a lot of literature out there, so we could send literature out and then have a conversation about that as well. And then we definitely want to dive into some of the topics that are really important of climate change, health, and environmental justice. And one of the other topics we could present on is this big question of what are the disadvantaged communities according to this definition of environmental justice. And so we can dive into that as well. If there's anything in particular you want us to focus on before others, certainly tell us. It is malleable, and you guys can help guide by saying what it is that you're most interested in. And we can do that offline, just shoot an email, or if anyone wants to chime in now, that's okay too.
Yeah, I think we got a fantastic understanding of topics that you all are interested in with the exercise we did, and that'll kind of help continue to guide that process. But thank you for that, Matt. I think that was really informative to give you all a sense of kind of what we envision as initial next steps, and then working together to define what that means moving forward. So with that, I think we are now officially at the end of our meeting. We want to thank you all again for spending the evening with us. It was great to see you all, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. So thanks again. Have a great evening.
Thank you all, and thanks, Dave,
for
facilitating.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.